All right, we do have a quorum here, and just want to call the meeting to order. I know that there's some traffic issues down on 131, at least coming from the south side. So we'll make sure our commissioners get here. There's some that are going to be a little late, it looks like. But just want to get the meeting started. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment today? All right, seeing none, our next item is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved and supported. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is from probate court. We have the performance measurement review. And Avery's here with us today. Thanks for joining us, Avery.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'll get started here. I know there's a lot on the agenda today. My name's Avery Rose. I'm the probate register at the Kent County Probate Court, and I'm here to offer our performance reviews presentation regarding the probate court and also the Kent County Guardianship Program. We're going to be looking back at what the court has done and the guardianship program has done and what we look to do in the coming months here. So first, if you don't know, the probate court is a court of statutory jurisdiction. It handles deceased estates, trust matters, civil cases, guardianships for adults, conservatorships and protective orders, mental health cases, drain appeals, and the delivery of election precinct returns to the Board of Canvassers. The court gets its jurisdiction directly from the Constitution. Article 6, Section 15 essentially says anything that the legislature gives the probate court, it must handle. And so what we have is the Estates and Protected Individuals Code, the Revised Judicature Act, and the Mental Health Code being kind of the primary bodies of law that give the court its marching orders in terms of things to handle. So it's a wide variety of different things that we do. Today I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an overview of our strategic goals, looking at our performance metrics and accomplishments, and then looking ahead at what we hope to accomplish in the coming months and years. Our mission at the Kent County Probate Court is to provide an accessible and person-centered venue to secure the peaceful, sound, and efficient resolution of matters where every individual is treated with dignity and respect. Through education, collaboration, and systematic improvement, we try to live up to this mission every day. And really the bottom line is our work is about people. People are coming to the probate office typically on the worst day of their lives or in the worst season of their lives. They could have lost a loved one. They might have a family or friend who's incapacitated or struggling through a mental health crisis, and they just need to know, what do I do next? Where do I go next? And we get to be the people there to help them through that process. And we try to be cognizant of that and assist people with compassion and care whenever they reach out to the court. The strategic goals that we handle are timely handling and fairly adjudicating all matters before the court for the protection of people and their property, to maximize probate staff through innovative technology, systematically collect reimbursable fees, and to provide public guardians for those who need one. If I had to characterize 2021, it was a year of turning things around and kind of getting back on the horse for us. We had to treat our mistakes as occasions for learning and turn our problems into opportunities. And I think as you'll see here, we were able to turn some of those challenges into success last year. So the first objective that I wanted to cover with you is timely adjudicating matters before the court. The Kent County Probate Court last year had 7,150 new filings, which is the second highest year on record. This is a 34% increase in the last 10 years and a 61% increase since 2008. You can see based on the graph here, it keeps kind of coming up. There's a little bit of a dip in 2020, and I think most courts saw that dip. The majority of new filings handled by the court were mental health proceedings and out-of-county mental health cases, estates and adult guardianships primarily. The biggest changes that the court has seen are in the last 10 years, adult guardianship cases increased by 54%. Conservatorships have increased by 40% in the last 10 years, so that's probably partly due to an aging population. here in Kent and a growing population. In the last 5 years, name changes have actually increased by 97% in the court, and petitions for mental health pickup orders have increased by 70% as well. So this slide here is an example of one of the performance measures the court looks at, the disposition rate on which the court is graded. In 2021, the court disposed of 98% of its mental health petitions within 14 days, and the guideline is 90%. I'm pleased to say that in 2021, the probate court's disposition rate exceeded all of the state minimum guidelines for guardianships, conservatorships, deceased estates, and mental health matters. And if you don't know, a disposition rate is the time it takes to resolve a case from the date on which it's filed to the date that it's resolved. So each type of case has different rates going from, the initial phase all the way through the end of the case, and it changes depending on the case. So like civil and trust cases have much longer guidelines than a mental health case. All right, so the next objective I'd like to talk about is reviewing and preparing all files for hearings so that they can proceed smoothly and efficiently. Our hearing numbers at the Kent County Probate Court have increased by 11% since 2017, and last year, the Chief Probate Judge, Judge Dave Murkowski, and the Register conducted a record high of 3,722 hearings. So Judge, I think, handled about 2,600, and I had just over 1,000 hearings. So that's a lot of cases to prepare every time, a file goes up for a hearing judge, or if I hear a case, it's got to be prepared. The filings have to be in the file and appropriately docketed and so forth. Overall, the probate court clerk's office in 2021 handled a much greater workload in terms of new filings and hearings than it handled 10 years ago. And to maintain this workload, we try to rely on technology such as Outlook, Google Sheets, Teams, Zoom. We have regular staff meetings, training opportunities, and we have a staff manual, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Next, I'm going to talk about training and equipping staff members to provide excellent customer service. The court began holding monthly staff meetings in March of last year to provide training, disseminate information, and keep everyone on the same page. We all want to be rowing in the same direction as a court, and we think that the meetings have been extremely helpful for welcoming our new staff members and team building and educating our staff. We also released a new manual, which I mentioned before. It's in an online format, so everyone can access it from a browser, essentially. It has links to forms and other helpful information, and it can be updated in real time, so we're constantly updating the manual to make sure that it's accurate and correct for staff. The probate court also worked with IT last year to develop a strategy for scanning new filings with the court, and we were actually able to implement that plan earlier in June this year, so now all new filings are being scanned into OnBase as they're being docketed in our case management system. So that's been really helpful. One of the ways to gauge our work and the work of our staff is through surveys, obviously. Scale requires what they call the Public Satisfaction Survey, and we've conducted quite a few of those since 2015. Our most recent iteration of the Public Satisfaction Survey was offered during the week of November 15th. And for the first time ever, it was conducted virtually. Before, we used to have little sheets of paper people would fill out, plenty of candy to help them along their way through the survey. And this year we had QR codes set up in the probate court clerk's office, in the judge's courtroom, and then in Zoom. People would take a picture of that, and then they would go to the link and fill out the survey that way. Although the number of survey takers was down considerably this year, and I suspect that's a result of the format of the survey and lower foot traffic and other factors, the responses and the overall feedback the court received were overwhelmingly positive. The results showed that 86% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that they were able to get their court business done within a reasonable amount of time. 92% felt that they were treated with courtesy and respect by court staff, and 83% felt that the judge or register treated them with courtesy and respect. And I have some specific quotes here in the PowerPoint. I won't read those for you now in the interest of time, but take a look at those, because honestly, anyone who wrote something at the end of the survey wrote something positive. I actually had to find or curate the ones that I wanted to share with you today, because they were all so positive. So the next objective we track is the percentage of reimbursable legal fees we collect in relation to the amount of legal expenses that we incur. So the court's 5-year average with this metric is about 26%, a 26% recoupment rate. Last year we collected 23.7%, which is below our average and our goal. Of 30%, it was about $43,000 that we collected last year. This year, we've collected already $45,000, and we're about at 57% of the reimbursement versus fees, and we're hoping that we'll be able to meet our 30% goal this year. I'd like to switch gears here now and talk about the guardianship program. If you don't know, we have a phenomenal guardianship program here in Kent County. It's one of a kind. I can tell you, because I used to work in a court that did not have such a program. We had a handful of people who were willing to serve as guardians, and they may or may not take a case, and you never knew how things would resolve. If someone needed a guardian, they weren't assured a guardian. With the system we have, they're not necessarily assured a guardian, but they have a much better chance of getting one in the case where they might need a guardian. We have 35 excellent public guardians, and we're hoping to continue growing the program because there is a need. In 2021, we conducted 13 interviews. We invited 7 people to join the guardianship program, and 4 have remained. Which doesn't seem like a great track record, and I can tell you that it's actually better than the results we saw the year before, but it's hard to be a guardian these days, I'll tell you. The amount of pay that guardians get versus the amount of work that they do on a regular basis, it doesn't always add up, and it's more like a volunteer opportunity than it is a job for a lot of these folks. Last September, the guardianship program also adopted a new guardian manual. So we've been busy making manuals at the probate court. It's also online. It has appendices with links to checklists, court forms, and those are all being updated in real time, so guardians have the newest stuff at their fingertips. In October, we also produced a new training program for onboarding new guardians. Before, we had a model where there was one trainer who trained all the incoming guardians. We switched to a mentor-based model, and now the guardian monitor and I meet with new guardians in person for a one-day training where we go over forms, processes, and then we turn the new guardians over to their mentors, and we've had a lot of great feedback about that new setup. So demand for the program is growing, as you can see here. There was a 51% increase in cases covered by the program since 2016. In the first quarter of 2021, the program paid for 577 indigent cases. The way that fees are paid are, there are a few different streams of money that come into the program. The state of Michigan and the senior millage pay guardians $83 per month for indigent cases that they handle. Kent County pays guardians $60 per month, and on average, county funds cover about half of all those indigent cases. Some financial highlights that I want to share with you are that in October of 21, the Kent County Senior Millage increased its contribution to the program from $230,000 to $259,000. And last year, the program also renegotiated new 3-year contracts with Spectrum Health and Mercy Health St. Mary's. They're now contributing $75,000 per year, where previously they were contributing $50,000. I have a few stories that I want to share with you about wards that some of our public guardians helped. Lucy was placed in Kent County because her family was trafficking her. After several placements, she was ultimately placed in an adult foster care home by her guardian. The guardian said, I have watched her grow into a beautiful young lady who now cares about her appearance, including her hair and weight. She has a boyfriend, helps around the house, and has grown from a shy introvert to an outgoing individual. Lucy is in a much better place in her life and is much happier thanks to her guardian. Another ward, Aaron, was not managing his affairs well after leaving jail following a DUI conviction. The guardian was able to assist Aaron get his finances in order, pay down some of his debt to the point where Aaron wasn't so overwhelmed with his financial situation. Aaron filed a petition to terminate his guardianship and conservatorship, which was granted. He took back control of his life and financial affairs. And the guardian says she still checks in with him on birthdays and other times, and he's still doing well. And last is a card from a ward who passed away. His daughter sent one of our public guardians a card, and the card says, "Dear guardian, thank you for all you did for my dad. He asked me to thank certain people, and you were one of them. He said you made him feel like he still had dignity when others did not." These are just some of the stories that we have, and it just highlights the exceptional work that our guardians do in helping people. You hear so many negative things in the news, from Britney Spears to other things about how guardianship and conservatorship are bad and take away people's independence, but there are people out there who really benefit from having a guardian and conservator, and we have some excellent fiduciaries in our program. Now I'd like to talk about some of the court's accomplishments in 2021, just briefly, and I've talked about some of these things already. The court pursued excellence last year. We were able to launch Turbo Court for adult conservatorships in the spring last year. And what Turbo Court for adult conservatorships does is allow self-represented litigants to answer a series of questions, and then it will compile documents that person needs, e-file them, and send the payment to the court directly. Turbo Court will prepare petitions to initiate an adult conservatorship, to terminate or modify the conservatorship. It'll help prepare petitions to sell real property, prepare accounts, inventories, and all kinds of other things. Another thing the court has continued to do is offer online informational meetings via Zoom. We held 5 last year, for which 165 people registered. And they're about 2.5 hour trainings. And I essentially sit and go through all of the forms from start to finish and the processes that people need to know. So people are coming who are maybe a guardian for a family member. They have no idea what their duties are. And we've gotten some great feedback from that. Another thing that we tried to do is update our website. We updated the small states page for deceased estates under the small state threshold. We updated our name change page, which is a growing component of our caseload at this point. We added a fee schedule with a comprehensive list of all the statutory fees people might need to know when filing with the court. And the court also updated its forms page. A lot of the court forms have changed in the last 2 years, almost all of them it seems like. So having the most up-to-date form is important. As of April 1st, we were no longer allowed to accept previous versions of court forms. The court's also trying to support its team the best we can by making sure that we're adequately staffed and adequately equipped to do our jobs. Last year, Plant Moran conducted a staffing study and did confirm a staffing shortage. Essentially, the study found that the court's caseload per full-time employee was 76% greater than the average of comparable counties like Oakland, Macomb, et cetera. And thanks to the board, the court did add 2 full-time employees and converted 2 part-time positions to full-time starting this year. So we're up to 17 employees in the clerk's office, and that has been immensely helpful for our efficiency in the workflow in the office. The court also adopted new staff manuals, as I mentioned, which was actually recommended by Plant Moran. And they have been helpful for training, collaboration, and coverage. We also, like I said, instituted staff meetings. We recognized birthdays, years of service. We watched training videos through the Michigan Judicial Institute. And most importantly, we always have donuts at our meetings. So if you're ever in need of a fix once a month, you can join us. Our goal, our aim at the Kent County Probate Court is to be a high-performing court. And I think that if you look back at last year, our performance indicates that we were that. We have an increasing caseload. Probate court staff handled 497 new filings per employee. 10 years prior, they were handling 100 fewer new cases per employee, just to give you an idea at how much the caseload has expanded. The court exceeded its disposition rates in 2021 for all case types. We had a record number of hearings and great feedback on our public satisfaction survey. To kind of give you a look ahead at what we're trying to roll out in the future, there are three main things I'd like to highlight. One is we're looking at some options for e-filing in the probate court. We're working with the 17th Circuit Court, the County Administrator's Office to come up with a solution that will be more comprehensive in nature. We have, Turbo Court for adult conservatorships, but we'd like to give the option to people to file in other types of cases as well. We're also getting a new judgeship starting in 2023, which will be a big change for our clerk's office and our personnel at the court. And then we're also looking to scan and digitize a greater number of files. As I mentioned before, we're scanning all the incoming stuff as of June 10th of this year. But the court hopes to digitize closed files in the form of paper and microfilm as well, which are taking up 2 significantly sized spaces in our office. And it'll help people find the files they're looking for as well. So that's all I have for you. And do you have any questions for me at this point?
Thank you, Avery, for the report. Any questions? Commissioner Hennessy.
You can always count on me for a few questions. I'm really pleased by all of the changes that you're making in terms of developing the manuals, this training that you're doing, and the mentorship and the guardianship program. I find this all really, really good. One of my questions is, in your last page here, it talked about new judgeship. One of my questions is concerns the changes in staff that you may be continuing to see in how you're doing transition planning or, evolving on the staff use.
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. I think that was what prompted the manual. Not to go off on a tangent, but I read a really fascinating book recently called Anti-Fragile. And it's a book about entities becoming stronger or more robust in the face of challenge and ways you can do that. And an example of something that's robust is DNA that's passed, and changes and so forth. And a manual is kind of like that. It's kind of like our DNA, our procedures, our policies. They're in writing. We can change them as we need to, but there's something that we can go back to and say, okay, that's how we do this. That's how we accomplish this. And I think we're constantly trying to think of ways to ensure that people are able to pass the baton when necessary. And we've had, I think, 14 vacancies open up since March of 2020 in our office. So we've had some of those have been retirements, but there's been a lot of turnover in the court. And I know we're not the only court and department within the county who's experienced that, but really I would say it's our policies, it's our procedures, it's our manuals, and then staff meetings too. Just getting everyone marching to the same drum, and our mission as well is at the end of the day, like I said, it's about people. And if we're serving people, we're trying to do our best work. That's what we're here for.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You can't answer things in the specific, but yet you're telling us some of the ways in which you will be managing future staff changes and the mechanisms that you have in place and how you're using them. One thing that surprised me in your report was I did not know that you handled the election precinct returns.
Yeah. It's a very little known thing about probate courts, but we actually sit there with the election staff. So Lisa Posthumous Lyons, Rob, and Jared, and the clerks will come in with their results. They hand a big stack of things. I don't quite understand what's all in the envelopes and the chips and so forth. I'm not an expert, but they hand a lot of stuff to the court, the county clerk, and then they hand the official results to the probate court. And it's like a pink envelope that we take and we keep. We hold it in safekeeping. We actually have a sheet that is sort of like a chain of custody form that Judge Murkowski and I developed, and it shows when the results were received, when they were placed in safekeeping, and then when they were delivered to the Board of Canvassers Thursday morning following an election. And we have someone from the Board of Canvassers sign off on that form indicating that they've received our results. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Brevy. So you started out your remarks by saying the state says whatever we want you to do, you have to do. So when they
Yeah.
tell you to do something, are you fully refunded from the state of Michigan for those activities?
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. What do you mean fully funded by the state of
Well,
Michigan?
does the money come from the state then to fund what they want you to do?
I think the answer is primarily no. I think we're funded, it's one of those things where the court is funded by the funding unit, which is the county, and then the legislature can add or divvy up, workload how it wants to. I think that's my understanding. Filing fees go back to the state, so revenues go partly back to the state and partly to the funding unit, but no. And I think there was a commission that looked at court funding a few years back, and one of the recommendations was moving courts to the state to be funded, salaries, everything to be funded by the state of Michigan as opposed to the model that we have today. And I think some states like Florida have that model too, where the state funds all the courts, but I think the answer is no to that question.
So the fee structure that's set in place, that's then set by the state of Michigan, correct?
Correct, yes.
So, on a more broader question is that, if you look at the probate court and the amount of forms people have to file, the complexity, how it's written is probably confusing to some. If you would put in a scenario where two people had lost a parent, their estate needs to be settled, one lives in a low-income part of the county, makes maybe $20,000, $30,000 a year, and you've got a couple in the suburbs that are making six-digit, do you think that the outcome for both of those are gonna be the same, the time-wise, the amount of effort, whether they had to hire a lawyer, could afford to hire a lawyer, just to settle the estate of a deceased person?
It's a tough question. I think it always depends on the exact circumstances of each case, but, and I also think it depends on whether people retain an attorney. People can file most things themselves. Well, pretty much everything. You can be a pro per filer or a self-represented litigant and file these forms by yourself. It would certainly be easier to hire an attorney for most people. Just like it'd be easier if you were redoing your bathroom to hire a contractor to fix it and not do it yourself. So certainly if people had the means to retain an attorney, it'd be easier for them to do that. The forms are the same for everybody. So, we don't give anyone a break necessarily based on their socioeconomic status. They're required by law and by the state court administrative office. So we would require the same forms, whether it's from an attorney or a self-represented litigant. But I do think typically it's going to be easier for people to retain an attorney when they file.
So if one doesn't have the means to hire an attorney, the outcomes for that citizen of the county would be different than
The
other.
outcome. I don't think the outcome should be different. I don't think it should, based on, that's a judicial decision and a determination, and the court's gonna make it, I don't know what the dispute would necessarily be, but, no, everyone would be treated the same in the
Well,
court.
yeah, I'm not saying treated the same, just the final outcome of it. If someone without the means to hire a lawyer that has to do the e-filing may not have internet access at home, may not have a computer, and may have difficulty with that estate where they just say, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about it. And then the house is seized, the assets are seized. It seems like that there's two sets of levels when we deal in the courts, is the ones with means and one without means. And I, you've kind of brushed around it, but admit that there's probably a problem, but that's something that we never talk about. And it's nothing against you or the judge. I just think our whole court system is very biased in the wrong decision, in the wrong way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? One quick question I have is about the name changes, and that seems like it's a recent trend. Is that something that you have heard in other courts with all the, the increase of people changing their names?
Honestly, I haven't heard. I know last year we had a huge influx of cases because people were waiting in 2020. Seemed like there was, people didn't want to file just yet. And then once, things got a little more opened and easier, people decide, okay, now's the time I'm going to file. And I think we just got bombed with lots of petitions to change names. So I can't exactly describe why that is. And I haven't talked to other courts to see if they've experienced the same increase, but I suspect that we're not alone in that area.
All right, interesting. Any other questions or comments for Avery? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for your report and the work that you do.
Thanks for your time.
Next item on the agenda comes from the Administrator's Office. It's adding 2023 additional positions beginning October 1, 2022.
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the addition of 5.5 FTE positions to be included in the county's 2022-23 budget resolution for budget starting October 1, 2022. The 2023 position requests were reviewed and a recommendation was prepared by a staff committee, including representation from Administration, Human Resources, and Fiscal Services. The proposal includes 5.5 FTE positions at an anticipated cost of $512,082 as summarized below. Administration, Indigent, Assistant Corporate Counsel, I'm just going to read the positions.
That's fine.
Unless you want me to read all the details too. Defense, Administration, Indigent, Defense, Friend of the Court, Health Department, Sheriff Emergency Program Specialist, Sheriff Patrol Sergeant, Sheriff Lieutenant, and note an additional vehicle is required for the Patrol Sergeant position. The cost of the vehicle, $54,250, will be absorbed in the Sheriff's 2023 General Fund budget. With the concurrence of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee, funding for these projects will be included in the 2022-23 budget resolution scheduled for board approval on September 8, 2022. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Thanks, Al. Is there a motion for this item? Moved. Is there support? Support. Moved and supported. Any questions or comments on agenda item 4? All right, Al's going to read through a couple more things here.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk, a couple of you sent me emails yesterday and we talked on the phone, but I just wanted to run through the positions, just so you get a sense of where we were on each one. I'll do it quickly. Indigent Defense, those are positions that we determined necessary for the public defender function. Indigent Defense function, those are paid for 100% by the MIDC at the state level. Friend of the Court is consolidating 2 positions. That comes at a cost of $10,580 to the general fund. And then there's other revenue sources that pay the lion's share of that change. Health Department, Account Clerk 2, also comes with non-general funding, so $14,398 of that is general fund. The rest is grant funded. Sheriff, part of when you look at these requests, part of whether you think that's a lot or not depends on when you checked into Kent County. Because I can tell you when I was here the first time, the county was adding positions at a clip of about 44 a year. It was actually kind of, whoa, wait, time out. Are we sure we need that amount more? And then the Great Recession hit, And a number of departments had substantial cuts in the Great Recession. And emergency management's one of those. We went down 3 positions. And so this would add one of those back. And I think as I look at the function, probably you'll see requests in the next 2 budgets to get that staff back to where it was in 2008, simply to be able to adequately perform emergency management at Kent County. We need to get back to where we were a long time ago. So that's really the justification on that one. We do have a patrol sergeant position, again, not funded by general fund dollars. The lieutenant position, again, that's at the grant position. And again, not an impact on the general fund. So at least that gives a bit of a picture as far as, and I should say, all the departments, offices that have requests are here today if you want to drill down into that a little more. But these are the positions, you can see $512,082 total cost, $66,986 general fund cost.
All right, any questions? Commissioner LeGrand?
Thank you, Chair. This may be a weird question because there's actually no dollar assigned to it, but it was pretty recent that we talked about the human trafficking position, I think, right? So, but now it's becoming temporary to full-time. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Good morning, and you're correct. So this is the same person. We initially were still in an organization grant. We're still kind of in that same grant that we talked about then, but it's clear that we're going to need this position through the fruition of the grant, which is a 3-year period. If we're not able to get continued funding after that, this position would be dissolved. It's contingent on the funding for this grant or future grants. So there's a possibility this particular grant could be extended, but there's other grant opportunities, or, we could also pursue funding through the board from general fund. I'll tell you, this person is very busy. We've had a significant amount of progress on this grant, so I think I'm feeling good about the work that's being done, and it's reason for us pursuing the grant.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Hennessy?
There are a number of positions between this and the next resolution. I'm curious as to what makes these part of the October 1st budget, especially since there's at least one patrol sergeant who has no grant funds, no state of Michigan specific support for the position.
That is actually a grant-funded position, so it's, we call it 416, it's secondary road patrol, yeah.
That is great, okay.
Yep.
Non-GF, okay.
The state restored some secondary road patrol funding, so that's where this is coming from.
Okay, I did read that wrong. Okay, so that is going to be a road, secondary road, okay.
Secondary road patrol, which is specific to traffic work, so they do accident investigation, they supervise staff, do traffic work.
Okay, so then these positions are called October 1 because they are dependent on state grants.
Correct.
And then we will be taking them up on a budget resolution in early September.
Right.
And when,
It'll be part of the budget that comes to you in early September, right?
okay, so it will be approving before October 1st? Okay.
Correct. The budget, until next year, 2023, the budget is still adopted in 2 pieces. The part that goes active October 1 and January 1. Starting with fiscal year 23-24, we'll have one resolution and the whole budget will be activated October 1 of 2023.
Commissioner Skaggs?
Thank you, Chair. I may have missed it. I was lost in thought for a second, so I apologize if, Al, if you went over this. But the last 2, the Byron Center School Resource Officer and the Cascade Community Police Officer, the non-general fund dollars, that's from what source?
The non-general fund was contract money from those
From the
jurisdictions.
localities?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
All right, good questions. Commissioner LeGrand?
Thank you, Chair. Again, I don't want to be jumping ahead, but like we have an assistant prosecuting attorney on this list, and we have a couple more on the next. What's the relationship between those requests?
Oh, this list, those are the indigent defense. So those are the public defender positions, and they're tied in with the state funding through the MIDC.
Prosecutor is?
Well, this list, first list, the October 1, I'm not seeing prosecutor here. He's on the other list that goes with the January 1 positions.
That my page is messed up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so these two on this one are both indigent defense.
All right, any further questions? We're on item 4. It should say that on the top of your page.
Yeah, okay, so I've got page 18. That's the next list?
I think
Okay.
the next list is what you're referring to. The prosecutor positions is on the next list, yeah, correct.
Okay, sorry.
All right, there's a lot of positions today to weed through, but any other questions or comments on this item before we vote?
So we're dealing with 4, not 5,
Correct.
because 5's not listed as 5. And that's what makes this list confusing, is that you think it's all on one, and there's really 2.
Okay, so you're talking about this list that's after the resolution on item 4, correct? It's a list of all the positions that are being requested.
Right, that memo,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
the attached memo went out for the June 7 meeting, and we delayed it till now. And then we redid the memo, and it was about 95% the same. We actually improved the percentage that MIDC was paying and a couple other things.
one thing you can tell is by looking at the start date column. Right now, we're approving all the ones that are the 10-1 start date.
Yeah,
And then-
I understand all that, but this one states number 4, and there's nothing on this that this is number 5, which makes you think that this
Oh.
is with 4.
Okay, no, that's just the background information for and that would go with both action requests. Because it's the memo that had all the positions
And
outlined.
following that packet, there is agenda item 5 that has
So
the,
we took the list that was in the memo and we split it into 2. One for the ones that are activated October 1, and one that is the ones activated on January 1.
I understand that the format for number 4 is different than number 5, unless I've got a different packet.
I think mine are the same.
yep, you just need to grab
So
the
4 and
page
5.
that's behind it.
I could do that, Chair, but look at, this is number 4 is different than the beginning of number 5.
I'm not sure if yours was sorted differently, but mine are lined up correctly.
We're talking about number 5 that says agenda item number 5.
We're currently, we
We're-
just talked about item number 4. We'll move on to item number 5 in a minute.
Where it says item number 5.
Yep. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, and that's also 2023 additional positions beginning January 1, 2023.
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the addition of 14.4 FTE positions to be included in the county's 2023 budget resolution for budget starting January 1, 2023. The 2023 position requests were reviewed and a recommendation was prepared by a staff committee, including representation from administration, human resources, and fiscal services. The proposal includes 14.4 FTE positions at an anticipated cost of $1,454,558 as summarized below. Administration, senior admin specialist. Administration, increase of community engagement specialist to full-time. Facilities management, maintenance technician, human resources, HR specialist, information technology, business technology analyst, Parks Department volunteer coordinator, convert to full-time, probate court judge, probate court judicial clerk, probate court assistant supervisor, prosecutor's office, assistant prosecuting attorney, sheriff patrol deputy. With the concurrence of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee, funding for these positions will be included in the 2023 budget resolution scheduled for board approval on November 17, 2022. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
All right, thanks, Al. Is there a motion for this item? Moved, is there support? Support. All right, questions or comments on these positions? Yeah, Al, do you want to run through this
Yeah, I'll
again?
run through
Okay.
them quick again, sure. Okay, so, administration, senior admin specialist, one of the comparisons I do is I compare 2003 when I left Kent County to when I arrived back in 2021. And a lot of things, we added a number of legal staff, consolidated some in the administrator's office. We added land use, we added a whole bunch of things. But over that period, we actually went down 120 hours a week in core admin type positions. So, and I include county administrator, deputy administrator, assistant administrator, MAs, senior admin specialists, board assistants. Those positions, we actually saw a net decrease. So with this, I'm basically trying to get back to where we were in 2003, obviously in a county that has grown faster by numbers than any other county in the state. So that's that position. Community engagement specialist, one of the things that was very clear during the interview process is the county's on a path to improve how we engage in the community, and we want real engagement, whether it's strategic planning, budgeting, how do we engage the community in an effective way? When I give you my annual report on my activity as your first year administrator, you'll see that I have had a massive amount of meetings with all parts of our community. And part of the role of this engagement specialist will be to help build and maintain those relationships as we move into the future. So that's a key part, I think, of the strategy of the county as we engage more and more with all the different groups and peoples of our community. As I look at facilities, maintenance tech, that's for the new building up north, so obviously we're not staffed for that. Human resources, there's two positions here. One works with the retirement system and is mostly covered by the retirement system. So the general fund cost is going to be the smaller share of that at $17,169. And then I look at HR, the human HR specialist 2 recruitment. HR went down 7 in the Great Recession, hasn't added any back, and we find ourselves in the worst recruitment era that we've ever faced as an organization. And we do desperately need this position just to kind of keep our head above water as we try to recruit top talent and retain top talent for Kent County. When I look at IT, again, they went down 7 when the Great Recession hit, and they haven't added any back. And this is actually a position that's dedicated to working with departments to help them be more efficient and save money, help with the effort to push automation where we can and some of those things. So I see this as a critical step to be able to get to where we want to go as far as doing what we can at the most efficient use of dollars possible. Parks, at this point, it'd be adding .4 to convert a part-time volunteer coordinator to full-time status. Again, Dan would say that this is something that's been long in the making, and as we build kind of the cadre of volunteers for the parks, it's a little overwhelming right now, and this is a position that's needed, that upgrade, in order to maximize our efforts there. The judge and the judicial court clerk for the probate court are positions that were, that you've already voted to add, basically. That's the new judge and the clerk that's necessary for that position. Assistant supervisor, the justification for this position was basically there's been a massive amount of retirements. And of course, our probate register is shortly to assume the probate judge position. And I think they're looking to ensure that there's a healthy amount of administrative support and transition. And again, you know, Avery's here, and you can certainly ask him more questions after I kind of whip through the summary. Assistant prosecuting attorney, again, the prosecutor's here, but this is a numbers game, and it's overwhelming numbers, and that's what the review team saw when we looked at that request. At some point, we had this discussion when we talked about whether to also add a district court judge. You know, at some point, the numbers ran us over. We've got the hugest caseloads in West Michigan for the district court, and the prosecutor's office is directly impacted. And I view it as they need this to kind of keep their heads above water, but Chris is here, and he can talk more directly if you have more questions. The two The school resource officer and the community police officer. I think our longstanding attitude about these positions is that we do support them because there are areas of the county that are high growth that can't afford to do their own, to create their own police department. And this is a way to have quality police service throughout the county. And most of the cost for the position is borne by the contracting agencies. And if you have more questions about equipment and that type of thing, we have Jeff, we have Sheriff who can help with those things. So that's a rundown of the positions. And certainly we have all the leaders in the room that requested these, and I know are eager to answer your questions, so.
All right, questions on this item? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Brevi. So Al, let's jump right to the end of the list. The Sheriff's Office Byron Center School Resource Officer. What does that bring their total up to?
I think I'm gonna call on the sheriff for that one, so.
Just confirming with Chuck in the back of the room, it's 14. This is specifically the second resource office for Byron. There is another school district that also has 2. For the first school resource officer in each of the schools, there's a 30% cost sharing where the county pays 30%. But on the second one, there isn't that cost sharing. So this is fully borne. The personnel costs are fully borne by the school district.
Okay, so that part I'm fine with, and I understand all of that. So during all the crises with law enforcement across this nation, we always talked about different ways of doing things. So instead of putting another officer in, has the Byron Center Schools looked at maybe adding a social worker of some type? Instead of putting another,
I think that most schools are taking a multifaceted approach. And mental health is part of that multifaceted approach. Our officers join a multidiscipline team in assessing the right action for most of the students that they become involved in, which helps build our approach and helps inform how we're gonna handle a particular circumstance, specifically a longer-term circumstance. I can't specifically say what Byron Center is gonna do for mental health in their schools, but it is something they're assessing.
okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on these items? Commissioner Hennessy.
To continue then with talking about this Byron Center position, when you say that we don't offer any financial support, that means we won't be subsidizing the position, the uniform, a vehicle, anything like that?
No, we do pay for all of the uniforms, and there is a vehicle charge to the school district as part of the contract, but it doesn't fully recognize the initial cost. It's more like a lease payment where it pays it down over time, so there is a general fund cost. I will also remind everybody that the way their contracts are written, we are able to use these officers for emergency circumstances outside of their contract. So there is a balance. There's a additional safety to each of these communities where the entity adds resources for contracts. It also helps us with special events, for countywide events. That's one of the things we talked about earlier this summer that's been quite challenging for every department in the county to have enough resources available to do special events. School resource officers in particular are not working on their normal assignment during the summer, so there is often times that they're used to do special events for the county.
Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. So this whole list represents 4 new hires for you, like 4 people coming from outside the department, right? Like the secondary road sergeant, the emergency program specialist, the Byron School Resource Officer, and the Cascade Community Police Officer. I mean, even if someone's moving within your department,
Yes.
they'll have to be replaced with a hire, right?
Yeah, so 3 would be specifically working for our department. The emergency management is a little bit different because we oversee them, but they actually work for the board. So they're on our list because we provide management control over them day to day. but they are actually an entity of the Board of Commission, and they work for the administrator's office. So I always need to clarify that. That's not,
Okay.
those aren't my decisions, those are your decisions
Okay, thank you.
on
That's-
what to do with that. But, so yes, 3 additional uniformed personnel, all funded by outside sources.
Yeah, okay. And then I have a question about the prosecuting position. Like we had talked about when we had talked about adding another judge, which we didn't do this time around, that would require adding another prosecuting attorney, right? Is that still gonna happen? Are we adding it in advance, or are we gonna need another one?
That's a really good question, and I think we'll have the prosecutor address that.
Yeah, this is not for that spot. Actually, going back, I'm making sure I asked for 2. I thought I was getting 2
You are.
prosecutors. Okay, and there's a 1. I'm like, wait a second. These 2 are basically just to keep our head above water. If we did add another judge out in 63rd, I'd need a 3rd prosecutor.
okay, that's
Yeah,
what
this
I-
is basically 2 prosecutors for the outlying courts, Kentwood, Wyoming, Granville, because the indigent defense, which you guys have all talked about, they've got 4 indigent defense attorneys out there now, and we've got 1 prosecutor. So my one prosecutor's got about 1,000 cases covering all those courts. So we're just trying to get at par with the indigent defense out there right now.
Okay, great, thank you, that's very helpful. And then I've got a question for Avery. So we're adding a supervisor, and the judicial court clerk, is that like what you are now, the register? Is that the same title, or are we not gonna have a register, or what is that gonna mean?
We'll have a new register, but this is a position that, so we have a probate register, a probate supervisor, and then this would be an assistant supervisor under the supervisor, if that makes sense. Right now, our staff are handling, like 500 new filings per employee. It helped to have the additions that we saw this year added to the probate clerk's office, but roughly 80% of our staff have been in their positions for like 3 years or fewer. So we just have such a need for institutional knowledge and more supervisory help in filling in gaps when people are away, and also with training and onboarding in our office. So that's really what the position is for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not saying you don't need these positions, I'm just saying, is a register position also gonna be coming down the pike?
Yes, so the register position will stay in place, and we would post that job if and when it becomes vacant.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the other thing we looked at with this request was, you saw the numbers that Avery provided during his update. It's almost doubled the caseload, and staff hasn't obviously doubled. So that was another factor. Not only do you have a relatively inexperienced staff, but you also have a huge amount of increase in workload.
If you look at those other comparable counties that I mentioned, their caseload per staff is just under 200, and we're operating at 497. I mean, so this position it's going to help, bridge that gap a little bit for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just mention one other thing. One of my goals is to look at the whole county and get you a cost of government report. I mean, because I feel like we're all kind of flying blind. All of a sudden you say, whoa, we've had that kind of an increase in cases, and this is the staff we had, this is the staff we need. I think as a commission, you really need to know what it is we have compared to what it is good government it takes to run good government. So we'll be working on that. I'm not quite sure yet how to get that done, but we will work on that and get that done.
All right, Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you, Chair Breby. For the sheriff, kind of our fleet or our vehicle maintenance and vehicles in general. So when it comes to these resource officers throughout our community, and we see these vehicles being charged, are you taking newer vehicles and putting them out, and the patrol deputies that are out there day to day, and maybe giving these folks a little older, not older, but a little more gently used
Yes.
vehicle? I'm just curious.
Just for the record, we don't have too many gently used vehicles at the sheriff's department, so, but you really do have to look at this as a fleet of vehicles. we purchase each vehicle for a predicted amount of miles that that vehicle will be used. Almost every vehicle that's a fully marked patrol qualified vehicle in its early years will be used for patrol. It'll be considered a primary response vehicle. But as the point, it gets a little bit closer to that mileage, or perhaps some vehicles maybe a little closer to the age and not the miles, it'll get rotated off to a secondary service such as school resource officer, community police. But it does have to be a balance, because if you took a brand new vehicle and put it at the school, it would 10 years later not have enough miles on it. So we have to really, we watch, we rotate. It moves from the north part of the county down to the south part of the county to the east part of the county based on how many miles are getting put on it. And it's a very closely monitored system, so we can get every last mile out of those vehicles.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, before I go to Commissioner Hennessy, is there anyone else that has a first round? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Chair Breeby. I have two questions. One is on the Senior Administrative Specialist position for the Administrator's Office. Could you just provide a little bit more information on that? I know you, in the notes, it said, you know, that obviously it's to support a larger executive staff, but just would like a little bit, I guess, more information in terms of what that person would be responsible for in along with the staff that we currently have in that capacity. And then I have a question also on the parks conversion.
Sure. Yes. Well, right now we have one senior admin staff for really the entire administrator's office. And, you know, as I said, that this position basically does everything from setting up a massive amount of meetings to working with making connections on a lot of citizens that call. Some actually call the right place, many don't, but kind of lining them up with where they need to be to get their questions answered. Sometimes the senior admin specialist spends a fair amount of time on phone with some of our residents that are confused or need someone to talk to. And they work, and they're very kind, and they work with people and try to get them connected with areas where they can be helped. It can be meetings set up. Right now I have Katie. She attends all the Sustainable Business Park stakeholder meetings and takes all the minutes. And so as we do these initiatives, like the upcoming mobility task force, this position will likely be assigned to help that task force. As we have the new DCA coming on, this person will help support that individual. So really, it's all the basic kind of admin support. And you know, as I say, we're getting those core admin functions back to where they were, and this is a vital part of that, just so we can make sure we have the right support to get stuff done.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my second question is just in relation to the parks. So it sounds like there's quite a bit of work that the volunteer coordinator does. Should we be expecting another request from the Parks Department in the near future? Based on kind of the changes that have happened in the parks, expanding and that sort of thing?
I think we'll call on Dan to answer that question. Dan, is this going to keep us afloat for a while, or do you anticipate another position needed to manage our volunteer resources?
So we currently have 3 part-timers that are doing this position. Making her full-time, keeping the other 2 should keep us
Thank you.
All right. Any other Commissioner Kallman?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to circle back, Commissioner Ponstein's questions about the Byron Center School Resource and whether there's a more holistic approach to mental health. And I think there is. I think Byron Center School District and other school districts are doing that. I think it's, you know, we should all be saddened, I think, by the fact that it does require our school districts to step into so many societal problems in different ways. And the school resource officers, you know, in Byron particularly, less than a year ago, the school resource officer was critical in stopping a shooting at Byron Center High School. That student was expelled from the district and then allegedly murdered his father shortly after. So there's a lot of people in our community that are hurting, and so I appreciate Commissioner Ponstein asking if we're looking at this holistically, and yes, and unfortunately, I think the extra school resource officer is a needed reality.
Couldn't agree more. Commissioner Hennessy.
Just overall, I've been a part of a commission where we've had pretty stingy on our increases in staff. And this year, I'm a bit taken back, and understand the need for so many of these positions. But we do not have a full budget reference for them yet. I have several questions too, by the way, but we don't have a full budget reference for this yet. Are we sure that there is sufficient, funds to support these positions going forward? And, the ancillary costs that they will also result in? Let me just start there, but I do have a couple of follow-ups.
Yes, we are. We are confident of that. And this process is typically how we've done it, so that we can, when we give you the budget in September, everything is folded into that. And we're not starting to add all that in after you adopt the budget. So that's really more of a timing thing as far as why we do it this way. And let me also just say that in 2019, we had 20, 22 and 18, 15 and, well, I guess we ended up with 16 and 20, none in 21 with a moratorium, 15 and 22, and 19 and 23. So we're kind of in the ballpark. Again, relative to where we were in 2009, I think is also something to keep in mind. But no, certainly, we make sure at every step of the process that if we make this recommendation to you, we are confident that we have the funds in the budget for the personnel and for the ancillary costs, and that's what will be presented to you.
So, and given the review that you're doing of all these positions, going back to the Byron Center position, how did that, we have so many needs in the county for staff right now. We've had so many increases in the use of our staff personnel. How did this particular one, rise to the point that it would be the one that is funded, especially since it's the second position? And according to the report, there's only one other district that does have two.
Well, I think that part of the answer to that is the fact that the actual position cost is fairly minor to the general fund, and we do defray other expenses in the contract, and it's been a multi-decade strategy to partner with our local units of government and try to help them meet their needs without them having to create their own police department. And so I think it's been part of a long-term, 30, 40-year strategy. And I think that it would be a different discussion from my perspective as administrator if we were bringing you the full salary cost for these, because I see that as more of a direct competition with other needs in the county than I do of the smaller salary expense.
Then to go back and talk at the other position, with the Parks Department here, as I looked at that position, I realized, well, is there only one position? Because we're going to be having the new Parks Department office opening up. And will there be additional needs for staffing, cleaning? Will we have additional direct costs for the personnel to operate that building?
I'm going to say no, but I have Dan and I have Al here because we are moving from one facility to another, and I don't think the incremental change was enough to generate a personnel request for additional staff for that facility. So I think that's the answer, and I'm seeing heads nodding, so I believe that is the case.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's reassuring,
All
because
right.
then it means it's all inclusive. And this may not be the right place to talk about it, but we're talking about these positions and the costs of them. And going back to parks, I've noticed that in our HR advertisements for parks, that some of the positions, particularly for, summer help or what have you, are only paying $13 an hour, or maybe $13.50. I mean, is there a way in which we can also, as a legislative committee, go and look towards, what is, we have so much turnover, and a lot of our costs here, adding people in HR, is because of turnover. Is there a way in which we can look at what is an acceptable minimum wage for positions that we're hiring through our HR department? I'm not talking contract, through our HR department.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's something we can take a look at. We can have that discussion with LHR. I think that would be appropriate. I know that the target, it seems like McDonald's sets that target, right? And they've, within the last year, it seems like all over, they have been going to 15 and 17. But Amy, certainly I think a review of that, if we aren't continuously doing that, is in order. And we should be having that discussion with LHR, so.
I would appreciate that. And maybe we could get a report back on it as well, as you look at this.
Yeah, we can do that, sure.
All right. Any further questions on this item? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda comes from the Sheriff's Office. It's adding a maintenance repair worker position.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to add a maintenance repair worker position at the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office is requesting to add a full-time maintenance repair worker position as a part of a reorganization of their facilities staffing, where the duties of the Sheriff's Public Safety Facilities Management Director will be distributed among existing staff following his retirement. Most of the duties and responsibilities of the Facilities Management Director position will be distributed between two current facilities supervisors. The two facilities supervisors will delegate some of their current work to the new maintenance repair worker position, which will help to create capacity for them to take on the duties previously performed by the retiring Facilities Management Director. In addition, the actual position of the Public Safety Facilities Management Director was reclassified to a Building Custodian 3. The impact of the associated reorganization, including the cost for this new position, $69,276, is a budget decrease of $3,302, while increasing the capacity needed for the upkeep of approximately 650,000 to 700,000 square feet of building space.
Thanks, Al. Is there a motion for this item?
So moved.
Moved. Is there support? Supported. All right. Any questions or comments regarding this position? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda comes from Human Resources, and it's an amendment to the Kent County Employees Retirement Plan and Trust.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve an amendment to the Kent County Employees Retirement Plan and Trust. An amendment to the pension plan has been drafted to allow for an exception to plan participation as a condition of an offer of employment for an executive position. The amendment also allows for an increase in the maximum allowable hours worked from 1,000 to 1,400 for retirees who are rehired to work as security enforcement officers and to perform inmate transfer and related court security duties.
All right. Is there a motion for this item?
So moved.
Moved. Is there support? Support. There's support. All right. Questions or comments? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Breeby. So Al, can you, that first sentence, I mean, every time I've read it, this time when you said it, can you explain that to me in a,
Yes,
just
I can.
in simple English?
Yes, so we did make an offer, and it was accepted by Mark Rambo to become our other deputy county administrator. And he has had a long-term DC kind of focus on his savings for retirement and would prefer to opt out of the DB pension. I'm recommending it because I think it's an anomaly. I don't think it's something that's going to happen frequently. If it was, I wouldn't recommend approval. But I think in this case, our preferred candidate who's accepted the position has a method in place for his savings, and I think opting out allows us to get the talent we need, and it actually, in this case, because it's one person, it actually saves us money. So it's not a net cost to the retirement system. So that's the rationale behind it.
Thank you for that, because that's more clear to me than how it was written also. So the only other thing that I'd like to add on that, I'm okay with that, but I don't know if I'm okay with the second one. You can argue whether you agree that we should have a pension or we shouldn't have a pension, but I think it's been proven that with our employees that we have, it's something that they value. It's a tool to get them hired in. But what this does is allow someone who's been working for the county, come back on a contract basis, while collecting any benefits that they've received from being employed by us, to then begin working as a contract worker and then participate in a pension plan that's designed for our employees. So I am not going to be supporting this. I think that pension benefit is for employees. If they want to still be in the pension, they should have stayed employed by the county. Thank you.
Commissioner, perhaps an important clarification would just be that we're already doing this. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop and let the sheriff take this then.
Just one point of clarification. The SEOs that come in and work part-time, they do not participate in the pension program.
Okay.
It is strictly a salary that they receive. So we may hire them from the outside. It would be their first employment with the county, but then there are SEOs that do retire from the county. They do participate in the pension when they are a full-time employee, but when they are hired back in this role, they do not participate in either the pension or even the deferred compensation program that is also available for our full-time staff.
So why is this in here? It has nothing to do.
It has more to do with getting the manpower necessary to do the work.
Correct. So currently, our retired employees can come back and they can work up to a maximum of 1,000 hours per year. The struggle is with today's climate, like everywhere else, is finding people to fill those positions. And so when we have staff that are retirees that are willing and wanting to work and fill those positions, we want to be able to bump up their hours. So the number of hours that are being charged, if you will, to the county to fulfill those are not increasing. It's just who is filling those hours that's changing, potentially changing.
I've been at this for some time, 43 years. This is probably by far one of the most confusing agenda items I've ever had to deal with.
So just to be clear, we have people working the 1,000 hours right now, and you'd like to be able to use those people up to 1,400 hours, which will allow you more flexibility to be able to get the bodies the time you need to get the job done.
Correct.
That's the
There-
bottom line.
And they're not earning any additional pension credits.
Yeah, and once again, I'm not saying that, but I mean, we need to amend the pension plan to allow people to work more hours on a contract basis. Does that make sense? Maybe in the public sector, but I don't think the private sector operates that way.
I think, Michelle, do you want to expand on this a little bit more? From the pension benefits perspective?
This is actually one of those provisions of the pension plan. There's an existing provision of the plan allowing somebody to come back. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the pension in and of itself. It has much more to do with labor and the need for labor. And what we've experienced, like every other organization, is this incredible difficulty of filling positions and staffing positions and having the bodies there to do the job. And so this is hopefully going to enable the folks who, as Chuck DeWitt mentioned, are already in that position. They're willing to work more. They're experienced, they know the job, but they're just restricted by that because of this provision within the plan. I believe the 1,000 hours is a pretty arbitrary number. And I don't know the history of it. It's been in place for the 19 years that I've been with the county. But this very much goes to the labor situation that we're in and hiring and maintaining positions to get the job done.
All right, does that answer any further questions? Commissioner Ponstein? All right, Commissioner Kallman.
I think I understand, but let me say what I think and correct me if I'm understanding incorrectly. So today, Sheriff's deputy or somebody has retired and they're willing to work 1,200 hours the next year as a contractor, they can't because there's a 1,000-hour cap. And so that would cut off their pension eligibility if they worked over that 1,000 hours. But with this extension, they can work the 1,200 because we've increased the cap. But they couldn't work 1,500 because the cap's 1,400 instead of 1,000. Am I understanding
Yes.
correctly? Okay.
That is correct, yes. That was very clear. You understood it. All right, let's see. Commissioner Hennessy, did you have a question?
I have problems with every other, classification in this pension plan is done by class of people or type of employee. And here we start naming names. And I really have trouble with this individualization. Is there a class of employees that would be potential for this? I mean, what are we going to end up with? You don't anticipate that there will be more people, but wonder if there are. Are we going to start to have a list of exceptions along the way and naming them by name? Is there a class of people that are affected here? And my other question will be, our pension board operates on actuarials. Has this gone through the pension board for its consideration in terms of what the effect of both of the provisions of this resolution might be?
It's like Michelle has an answer for that.
Yeah, the pension board actually doesn't have the authority to amend the plan. So these types of things I always offer up at the meetings as a courtesy notification that a plan amendment is going through. And because this does go back to staffing, an exclusion from the plan wouldn't have any impact actuarially on the plan, though.
If I could pursue that, I mean, if we start to eliminate the number of people who pay into the plan, though, does that potentially have an effect? I mean,
That has an effect when there's a close, when the plan closes off, in that nobody new will be entering into the plan.
okay.
But in consideration of 1,800 actives, another 1,700 retirees, when we look at it in its entirety, one person will not move the needle in any way, shape, or form actuarially.
Okay. I just don't understand the class of people. I mean, who are we going to allow to opt out that are not specifically listed here already? Or how do we control this so that we have equity between all of our employees? I'm just having trouble with this. The other thought that I did have when I read it was I thought we had eliminated the difficulties with the Parks Department when those employees converted from the Road Commission to general county employee. I thought we eliminated that difficulty. Can that be eliminated from the plan as a group of people? Can that provision, that paragraph about them be taken out, since we're doing revisions here?
If you're referring to the Parks 401K plan termination and the one person, yeah, out of the 3 actively contributing people in that plan, we did have one person who opted to go into the 457 plan. And that was just due to the timing and nature of their own anticipated retirement and the vesting schedule under the pension.
Okay, so that remains a pertinent provision in this plan.
Yeah, totally different arrangement though, because that we mirrored the employer contribution that they were receiving in the Parks 401K plan under the 457 plan to keep them whole and make no change to what we were offering. We were trying to limit and not make it a pick your retirement benefit, but it's like, hey, we've got this pension, or we will continue to do what we've always done under the 401k in this other already existing plan. It allowed us to do something and offer and take away the 401k plan and the administration and cost associated with that, and just keep somebody whole for what they were already receiving in the way of a pension, in the way of a retirement benefit.
Okay, thank you. That just clarifies that it remains a pertinent part of the pension plan. Thank you.
Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess I just have a question about what a security enforcement officer does. I can understand why we would want to limit their hours so that we're not replacing salaried people with contract people. That makes sense to me, but what are they doing?
Sure, so they are the staff that are assigned kind of the front door, the screening for all participants that are coming into the courts, that are going into the prosecutor's office at the district court. There's actually a provision within the KCDSA, the corrections deputies contract, that specifies what it is that they can and they cannot do, but primarily they're the greeters. They make sure that those that are coming in are not coming in with a weapon. They ask or they answer general questions that the public may have, and they're that uniform presence.
Okay, and then can you just give us an idea of the scale of this? Like how many hours are worked? Do we have that number? Like,
I don't have the numbers right offhand. However, we have 2 officers that are assigned Monday through Friday at the prosecutor's office. I believe we have another 2 at the 63rd District Court, and then we'll have probably 5-ish or so that are assigned at the Circuit Court building throughout the day, and then they have, I think, 1 assigned into the night hours in case there's some overnight or after-hours activities for a period of time. So we juggle a staff to fulfill those hours. Probably 25 or so currently that fill those ranks. So we could expand it up to 35 people, but the hours that are used yearly remain the same. It's just the number of hours by each employee that or each SEO that changes.
I see. Okay, it's not like the job is gonna
Correct.
grow.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. So I think Commissioner Hennessy makes some good points about whether or not we want specific named individuals in here as opposed to like a class like commissioners or judges are listed. But that does bring up a confusion. I thought, I understood most of this, but when I started on the County Board of Commissioners, I opted out of the pension plan. And so I'm confused what the difference is with Mr. Rambo that needs to be like in this particular like amendment.
The reason the pension plan currently has provisions that allows for the commissioners and the 5 elected to opt out is because of terms. And the vesting, going way back, the history of the vesting under the pension used to be even longer than it is now, 8 and 10 years, where it's been brought down over time. So there was a good chance, depending on whether somebody was coming in expecting to serve a term and then move on, or the matter of not being reelected. So because they're not employees, they're not here at will, they're here, based on the citizens voting them in. It all ties back to, the being elected in term limits.
Does that answer your question?
Does.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
All right, motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is miscellaneous. Is there any commissioner miscellaneous? All right, one item that I have is following this meeting, we have a work session about the administrator's office reorganization, and it's actually going to be in room 315 So that way, the Board of Canvassers is meeting, I believe, in the conference room back there. So, yeah, any other commissioner miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, our meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be September 13 at 8:30 a.m. Thanks.